When you look at a giant global company like Siemens, it's easy to just see this massive, complex machine. But have you ever wondered how it really works? Like, how does it actually make money and what's the game plan? Well, today, we're going to do something cool. We're going to pull back the curtain and decode this tech powerhouse, and we're going to use their own playbook to do it, the 2023 annual report. So let's dive in and see what the numbers can tell us. But first, let me ask you a quick question. Let's say a company makes 100 euros in profit. Does that mean they have an extra 100 euros in cash sitting in the bank? You'd think so, right? But the answer is almost always no. And that's really the core idea for today. Profit and cash are two totally different things. To get the full picture, you gotta learn to speak the language of business, the language of financial statements. So before we can really tear into Siemens' performance, we need to get a handle on that language. We need to understand the key financial statements that tell the real story behind all those big numbers. And at the heart of everything is the balance sheet. Think of it as a snapshot of the company's financial health at one specific moment in time. All the other important statements, like the income statement and cash flow, are really just telling the story of what changed on this balance sheet from one year to the next. Everything leads back here. Now, to understand how a company like Siemens makes a profit, you have to get your head around their costs. It's a classic balancing act. On one hand, you have massive fixed costs. Think of their huge factories and buildings. On the other, you have variable costs, like the raw materials that go into their products. Managing that balance is absolutely key to their success. And this number, wow, it just shows you the incredible scale we're talking about. For just their Dutch division, the direct cost to produce what they sold was over €500 million last year. That's the giant hurdle they have to jump over before they can even think about making a single euro of profit. Okay, so with those basics under our belt, let's zoom in on our case study for today. Siemens Netherlands NV. This is the Dutch arm of that massive global Siemens empire. So here it is, headquartered in The Hague. And this isn't some small satellite office either. It's a really important part of the whole global structure, completely owned by the parent company, Siemens AG, back in Germany. This is where the big global strategy gets turned into real-world action. So what do they actually do here? Well, it pretty much falls into two main buckets. First, you've got digital industries. That's all about helping factories and businesses automate and go digital. And second, you've got smart infrastructure, which is all about making our buildings, our energy grids, and entire industries smarter and more connected. And if you follow the money, how does that actually break down? Well, in 2023, smart infrastructure was clearly the bigger piece of the pie, bringing in about 61% of the revenue. Digital industries made up the other 39%. So that tells you, right now, where the bulk of their business is coming from. All right, now for the main event. Let's get into the hard numbers from their 2023 report card and see how they really did. First up, the top line, total revenue. They hit an incredible 692.3 million euros. And get this, that's a 29% jump from the year before. In a business this size, that is massive growth. But, of course, the big question is, how much of that trickled down to the bottom line? Well, after all the costs and taxes, they were left with 55.1 million euros in profit, a very healthy number. And what kind of engine did they use to generate those results? They did it with an asset base of 316 million euros. And that's everything. Factories, equipment, cash, you name it. So you've got this huge revenue growth, leading to strong profit, all powered by a really substantial operational footprint. Let's put that profit number in context for a second. If you look at this simple income statement, you can see the whole story. Look at the difference between 2022 and 2023. Revenues shot way up, and as a result, the profit after tax nearly doubled. It went from about 30 million to 55 million. I mean, that's what you call a fantastic year. And if we take a quick peek at their balance sheet, it just confirms how stable they are. Now, the crucial thing to see here is how their assets of 360 million are balanced out. Their equity, which is kind of like the company's net worth, is about 45% of their assets. In the finance world, that's a really strong solvency ratio, and it's a great sign of financial health. So those are the numbers, and they're pretty impressive, right? But numbers don't just happen by themselves. The real question is, what's the strategy? What's the secret sauce that's driving this incredible performance? At its core, Siemens' strategy sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. They want to combine the real world and the digital world, and they do this using some seriously cool tools, mainly something called the digital twin and product lifecycle management, or PLM for short.
So, what on earth is a digital twin? Well, you're looking at it right here. On the left is a completely virtual digital model of a production line. Engineers can build, test, and perfect every single detail in the software before a single physical bolt is tightened in the real world. Then, on the right, you see the result, the real-life factory, which is a direct, perfected copy of that digital model. It's amazing.
And the payoff for doing things this way, it's huge. By figuring everything out digitally first, their customers can get new products out the door way, way faster. They can reuse designs and data over and over again, which saves a ton of time. And the end result of all of this is just a massive boost in productivity. Of course, it's not all just about tech and profits. A company like Siemens has to think about the long game, its impact on the world, and the big challenges that are just over the horizon. And they're taking sustainability very seriously with something they called our degree framework. They've set some really ambitious goals here, like making their own operations net zero by 2030 and getting their entire supply chain to net zero by 2050. These aren't just buzzwords. These are hard targets that are going to shape their business for decades. But they're also being realistic about the risks they face. They're in a tough spot where new, disruptive technologies could pop up at any time. As a digital company, the threat of cyber attacks is constant. And let's be honest, managing huge, complex projects is always risky. The good news is they're actively working on all of these. So when you boil it all down, the story of Siemens today is really about this giant leap forward. By merging the digital and the physical worlds, they're not just making factories a little bit better, they're fundamentally changing how we design, build, and operate pretty much everything around us. And that really brings us to a final thought to leave you with. From smarter factories to more efficient cities, this fusion of real and digital is just full of incredible promise. But it also puts a big question on the table for all of us. As we build this future, this incredibly interconnected world, what are our responsibilities to make sure that the world we create is not just efficient, but also fair, equitable, and sustainable for everyone?